Is the mics working? Yeah, the mics are working. We just need to get the TVs up so we can see the agenda. They're nothing to push. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're about 10 minutes late, but we had some technical difficulties getting the screen up. This is the Thursday, May 11 meeting of the Washington Water Authority. First item, roll call of board members. Mick Wagner's here. Bo Speed.
Here.
Larry DeLozier.
Here.
David Bollinger.
Here.
Doug Chambers.
Here.
Nathan Prince.
Here.
Howard Carter.
Here.
All right, we have a full quorum, so next item is approval of the agenda.
Make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Bollinger and a second by Mr. Carter to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is approval of the minutes. The minutes before you were sent out, and I assume everybody's looked over. But did anybody see any corrections needed? If not, do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
I second.
Have a motion by DeLozier and a second by Mr. Speed to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item, approval of the financials. Last night I posted to the web a detailed set of financials, and it's oftentimes, and that was by purpose to give you the complete details, but today we will go through in an abbreviated version as I've got QuickBooks Live here, so that if there's any questions, we can bring that up. The balance sheet, not anything significant that we could see. Of course, we have moved around the banks, as you'll see here. Several of them have went to zero in prior months. They were showing. We've consolidated them and have also, and have the paperwork here today to sign, as the board approved last month, to move amounts into CDs, which earn higher interest rates. So that's been taken care of. If there's no questions on the balance sheet, I'll move on to the actual P&L. All right, here's the budget versus the actuals in a condensed version. Our water sales, although you might look at that and say we're under budget significantly by $400,000, when the budget was created, it was put in a straight 1/12 fashion. Naturally, in the hotter months, our volumes will be picking up. Next year, perhaps we will try to do the budget in a more seasonal approach to give you a truer picture as it's occurring through the year. Road crossing fees, I wanted to mention that. In months prior, for whatever reason, WWA felt that it was necessary that they control all road crossings, and what they would do, since they've had boring equipment, but the only problem, the boring equipment was insufficient to do the size of bores, so they've went to a third party to get them done. What's reflected in GL account 4040 is a summation because, again, previously there was a income shown for what they charged for the bore, and there was an expense charged for what they had to pay for it. Our accountant has consolidated that at my request into one number, and as you can see, we were charging less than we were paying, which resulted in a year-to-date loss. Since that time, we no longer are in the boring business, as y'all were discussed last month. So if someone wants to have water service after application's been accepted, it's up to them to find out whoever they want to get to do a road cut or a road crossing, depending on the entity's allowance for crossing the roads. Late charges are down. I guess that's a good thing, because people evidently are paying their bills better than they thought. Just hitting the highlights. Inspection fees, of course, are down because we no longer inspect in the city limits, as previously had been done and budgeted for in this deal. RPZ test fees, there'll be more on this later, but we'll get into that later in the agenda. But of course, they're down. Water purchase, of course, are down because our water sales are down. Once again, straight line budgeting versus seasonal. Materials and supplies, I'll speak to that issue and that, how do you have a negative expense? Well, in historical perspective, the inventory is taken, well, it was annually until we took over, and then it became monthly. And so not having a sophisticated inventory control where we could more finely done that, we take an inventory at the first month, inventory at the last month, any purchases throughout the month, any use of items throughout the month has occurred. So there should be some fluctuation. This month, however, it was called to my attention by Zach that the prices that they had been pricing of the inventory, we don't know when they were last updated. So this month, we got a true market price on everything we had in inventory, which resulted in a large write-up of inventory, which reduced the expense, if that makes sense, by $72,000. So that's explains why that number pops out like that. Road costing expenses we've already addressed. Meter purchases, last year they bought a bunch of meters. We haven't really had the need. We've had some inventory, so consequently that's been done. Insurance, once again, when the budget is put in, it was put in a fashion, well, insurance may occur quarterly or monthly or whatever, and again, we'll try to do a better job, but this isn't a real true picture of how the insurance is because we haven't got all of the expenses in a straight line fashion. Maintenance repairs were up significantly. Of course, we've discussed that, largely due to the Goose Creek disaster that happened in January, February, whenever it was. So that explains why that number is significantly changed. Professional services, although you look at that, there was a $73,000 invoice that we have already talked about that the prior manager had approved 10 days before his quick departure. So that's being looked into at other levels at y'all's direction. Utilities are down slightly. Employee expenses are significantly down, of course, because we've been operating without the salary of a general manager and actually a budgeted item for one field service person. So that explains why those are down so much. Interest expense, to be honest, I'm sorry, let me back up. Employee expense and payroll expense, taking 172, it's down somewhat. The interest expense, I don't know. I'll have to ask our accountant why that number's off. Why they budgeted that much, I'm not sure. But we've been recording our interest properly, so I don't have an answer for that at that point. Other income, we presented an operating income line. I thought the board might appreciate that better because if you want to take it from this approach, operating income is things that potentially we can control to some degree, greater or less. One thing that is a significant number is depreciation, and it's really commonly shown in an operating part of the budget or part of the P&L, but we moved it down to where you could see what true operations are because it's a non-cash item, but we thought it would be easier to see that before any of the things that we couldn't control, we've got a profit showing. And then when you add back depreciation, capital purchases, we haven't had any of significance this year or line extensions or whatever. But total other expenses result in the net income to show a loss, largely attributed to add backs of depreciation, the $70-something thousand unexpected and unbudgeted engineering expenses. So is there any questions that I could attempt to take an answer to? If not, do I have a motion to accept our financials?
Motion to accept as presented.
I second it.
Motion by Mr. Prince to accept, seconded by Mr. Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next item is the manager's report. Zach, would you care to take on that?
All right, giving you updates for the month of April. There was a typo on this. It does say March, but these are actually April numbers. New customer counts are ticking up, especially compared to the winter months. We did 113 new customers for a total of 7,888. I anticipate that to keep ticking up as we approach the summer months and we get into a little bit heavier construction season. As far as unaccounted for water, I've provided the last 4 months. We did tick down 6 points compared to the month before. We sold 4 million more gallons and lost 2 million less. As far as the operations report goes, the number is significantly different than last month's because we've implemented a new reporting mechanism where we're breaking stuff out and tracking things a little different. But in the month of April, we did complete 738 total work orders, ranging from general to inspections to locates. There is one note on the locates. If you go to Arkansas One Call, they did track us at 411. We only have 175 reported, so we need to look into that and make sure that all of those are getting reported appropriately in our tracking software. And then moving on to capital improvements, I've got the 3 big ones listed. First one is the Highway 265 upgrade. I do anticipate construction for that to be over by the end of the month, and we can finalize that project. I have requested payment 2 months ago. As far as I know, they've approved it. We're just waiting on the deposit check for the first round of reimbursement for almost $500,000. So be looking for that in the budget. Next to the Highway 170 relocation, Garver's here. We can speak more to that here in a little bit. And then the Goose Creek repair, we have requested Garver before a work authority to get that done. So they're looking into it. We're waiting on an answer back. With that, I can answer any questions you guys might have.
I would note too, and I'm sorry because I've presented in this order, we've moved the water loss into a tabular Excel sheet so you can see a historical perspective of what is going on with water loss. It just gives a better perspective of where we're moving up and down in that area.
One note on that, West Fork we haven't got the West Fork bill yet, but I just did a rough number and it didn't change the percent very much because it's such a small number from how much we purchased from the city of West Fork.
Okay. All right, the next item is the engineer's update. Mr. Button, if you would care to bring us up to speed on that.
Good afternoon. Feels like I'm sitting in the hot seat, but it's okay. So I'd be happy to give you all an update on the Highway 170 project, which is mostly reimbursable. As we've talked about before, we've completed all of our surveys, including utility surveys, picking up all the relocated utilities. We've worked with Washington Water Authority. We had some smaller water lines that we had some uncertainty on the location. So I think there's 5 locations in total that they dug up and we surveyed. We got all that done. We've ordered the property record research from an abstractor so we can go ahead and start preparing the easement documents. We've worked with Washington Water Authority. We picked up all the valves and meters and confirmed the configurations of how everything ties in. So we feel with high confidence that we got a good, accurate location on where the water lines are located and how they're configured. So we've moved, essentially expedited this project as much as we can. We're working on final plans, horizontal, vertical alignment, and we'll be happy to provide y'all a cost estimate update during the next board meeting. Be happy to answer any questions on 170, and it's a high-profile project, and working with Washington Water Authority and expedite as quick as we can.
Mr. Button, you said you will have an estimated probable cost by next month?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mayor Penn, do you have anything to add from your perspective as being one of the prime entities?
Because it's a high profile project, so just knowing when I get people calling me and asking me, hey, what's going
Right.
on, why is nothing happening, I can give them an update, and so when he gives us an update, then
Okay.
it's progressing.
If you could, y'all are moving forward the roadway advertisement for bids in June?
That's the projection,
Okay.
but I don't know, that's up to RDOT, so.
Okay.
So realistically, once you give us an estimated probable cost, Mr. Button, would, from that point, before we could go to get bids on the relocation itself, what kind of time are we looking at?
Essentially, what we're looking at is the easement acquisition documents, which is typically the critical path, working and negotiating the easements with property owners.
So I thought we had all the easements.
We don't.
We don't.
We'll see what the record research shows and what the other utilities obtained. But as far as I know, no easements have been acquired for the water line relocations.
Okay, I was under the understanding that we had most, if not but one or two. And I know in early discussions regarding this project, Mr. Penn knew a couple of them. He didn't think it was going to be a big problem, so.
Once we get the abstract of record research,
Yeah.
we'll know exactly what's been filed and recorded.
Okay.
That's typically might take a month or two just to acquire easements if we need additional easements,
Yeah.
but it depends on the property owners and how willing they are, and it's just a lot of unknowns that we have at this time.
Well, certainly, if I may ask, as soon as we get that identified, if we could get that information to Mayor Penn, no offense, but at this point, I think he may have a better reputation than WWA in this matter. For some reason, I'm not sure, but
I can probably assist.
okay.
I think
We're
gonna
gonna count on that.
Yeah, we definitely want to leverage that relationship that the mayor has, and
Right.
it sounds like he's more than, it's a mutually beneficial project for both of us, but typically we don't like to advertise for bids until we have all the easements, or, if
Right.
if we
I
have to.
understand that.
Yeah, so, but we're gonna
Okay.
move forward as
All
quick
right.
as we can, so.
One other question, and I think the way our contract reads, we have to assign you tasks, and certainly one of those tasks is the Goose Creek blow up.
Yes, sir.
We need a set of plans and estimate probable cost, because before you know it, we're gonna have snow and ice again, and I'd really not like to be worrying about that pipe laying across the bridge.
Yeah, we'll have that work order ready for the consideration of the committee here today, so, for the next meeting.
Okay, well, certainly as far as it could, that would be most appreciated, and expedite that. I know everything seems like an expedited situation with us, but you gotta understand where we come from.
All right. Now, Zach and I have talked in great detail about that project, and I've looked at it. It's about a mile from my house and drive by there all the time. But We're gonna do a horizontal directional drill, and you're never gonna have to worry about it again, so.
Right.
If I would back up one step, you talked about the cost estimate and the cost sharing that we're gonna present during the next meeting. We didn't have confidence in that before by the
Right.
work that others, so we've held off on developing the utility agreement between Washington Water Authority and the city of Farmington, but after we have a better handle on what it's gonna cost and what the cost sharing is, that'll be our next step, is to work with RDOT and develop that, utility agreement.
Okay. All right, very well. Well, thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the engineer before he? All right, thank you very much. Item 7, Miller Iron water tank inspections. Y'all were provided, matter of fact, I put them in last month's packets, the sanitary report that is required every 3 years by the Arkansas Health Department. And if you'll look at that, there's several comments about deficiencies in our tanks. And in review of the records, the last tank inspections that we had noted deficiencies as well. That was conducted in 2017. Now, the health department requires inspections every 5 years. Of course, last year was the 5th year. There was no inspection done. So we have people on top of the towers as we speak today. Miller Ironworks, which specializes in this, they're out of Van Buren, or the individual that I think's working lives in Van Buren, but I think maybe they're out of Conway, but home office looks like in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But irregardless, they'll be compiling a report, and we'll see what that looks like going forward. So I wanted to bring you up to date on that. Also, the cost. At this juncture, it's about $28,000, but it's not one of those things that you can say, we don't want to do it this year. Well, you might say that, but Arkansas Health Department's going to tell you again in your write-ups that you're overdue. Our next, with 3 years, 2021, so next year we'll have another sanitary report, so we've got a little time to get our act together. So with that, I want to talk about another glaring deficiency that we've inherited. For some unknown reason, the prior administration, I'll refer to them as, decided it would be a good idea for a public utility for water to test RPZs, while the Arkansas Health Department Cross Connection Control Program requires annual recertification of a properly working RPZ. The way the prior administration said they would do it is, we're going to charge everybody in our system that has an RPZ $7.50 a month, and then we're going to come around once a year and test it. Well, when we sent out the letters in late March notifying everybody that going forward we were not going to be doing the RPZs, that there's a number of certified testers in the area, and gave them a link, which is off the health department's website. First crack out of the box, an individual said, hey, now that you mention this, I don't think you've tested my water RPZ. Maybe in the last 2 years. So we started digging through the records, and sure enough, we had charged for services that had not been performed. Now, that's not a good thing to be, but if you find one, how many more there were? So I provided y'all this spreadsheet, and it would seem that over the years, there's been a number of customers that have not been tested. I'm trying to find the one. We had one going all the way back to 2012. Now, folks, you're seeing some pretty healthy numbers. Here's a guy that's going to have an overcharge of $1,050. Why on earth this utility ever come up with this cockamamie ideal, I have no clue. But it's a big embarrassment. But what do? Once you find something, you've got to try to make it right. So we have summarized that there's been close to $52,000 of charges that have not been performed. With that said, we have drafted a second letter explaining some situations. The other thing that has been discovered is typically when people use RPZs in their irrigation systems in the cities, they're going to have 2 meters because they don't want to pay for the sewer charges that run through that meter, so they have a separate irrigation meter. Unfortunately, not many people within our system have 2 meters. Primarily, don't have to worry about sewer. The other thing, it's pretty expensive for a monthly charge to be used by that. Again, Emory review for what was in the field, the common practice was to tee off the service line that went to the house and run it to the RPZ device, and that could arguably be an air gap, which would be an approved method for cross-connection protection. The only problem with that is at any given time, sometimes it gets hot in August, sometimes it gets hot as late as October. So people use their RPZs, and there's literally no way to lock out, if you would, that device. So in this letter that will be coming shortly here, we explained to the folks that had this situation that effective, and we moved the date back. Originally, we gave them June 1 to get RPZs tested, and now we've moved it out further. I see a typo. This hasn't went out, but there will be an extension to August 1st to allow them to install some sort of locking device. Now, some people may not want to use their RPZs at all. This one guy said, well, I don't even use it anymore. Well, you got 2 choices. You either put it so it can be locked out, a device, which you can get a curb valve for $100 plus your install, thereabout, or completely sever the connection to the RPZ. I want all of the board to be abundantly aware of this because I'm sure there's going to be some people that have been charged, but the good news is some of them are going to get a big check back. They're not going to get a check. They're going to get a credit on their account to make this right for the overcharges. So we're not trying to keep $52,000 of customers' money. So I ask each one of y'all to be prepared because there's probably going to be some upset people, but we've got to be concerned about our water system because that's what we're here for. And so I just want to make y'all aware of the situation and the public aware of the situation because this letter will be going out in the next week. And we'll send it out in the mail, and I'll have our inspectors go out and go door to door and put them on the door hangers because I want people to have as much personal contact and understanding of this as we can have. So beware, guys. Put your steel underwear on. Okay, next item. Discussion and evaluation of the general manager and other positions.
I think we have got several issues we need to talk in private about, so that in mind, I'd make a motion we go to executive session.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Bolden and a second by Mr. Speed to go into executive session. For those of you that may or may not understand what executive session means, it means that only the board resides in private conversations talking about employment matters. So, Stephanie, if you would, turn off the recorder on the way out. Okay. And we'll call you if any of y'all do want to hang around, we'll call you when we come out of it. Thank you, Mayor.